We seem to live in a time, don't we, where everything advertises comfort, ease, success. It feels like we're taught that, if life's smooth, you're winning.
Right.
But if you hit pain or stress or real struggle, well, then something must be fundamentally wrong with you.
Yeah, and that assumption, that cultural gospel, it's a flawed premise, really, because it leaves people incredibly vulnerable when, inevitably, life gets hard.
How so?
Well, if you believe ease is the sign of God's favor or, personal success, then when difficulty hits, it's not just pain. It's like existential panic. Your whole identity can start to crumble. So the sources we're looking at today, they dive deep into the exact opposite idea. That suffering isn't just wasted pain. It can actually be formative power.
Okay, that's the core tension right there. That's what we're really digging into today. We're trying to unpack this architecture of resilience. It's presented as a clear, step-by-step way to build faith, build character that can actually handle the heat. We're looking at the ethics involved, the actual practices, and importantly, how you can tell if it's working. How you, listening, can walk into stress and be refined, not broken by it. We want to get past the vague ideas and into the concrete stuff.
And before we even get to the how-to, the building blocks, we absolutely have to lay down some really crucial ethical, theological groundwork. Clarity up front.
Okay.
Because any attempt to teach resilience through suffering, if it's not handled carefully, pastorally, well, it can actually do more harm. So these guardrails are essential. That's where we have to start.
Makes sense. So what's the first big thing we need to guard against?
The first one, and maybe the most critical, is against simple blame. We have to strongly reject the idea that suffering is always punishment or somehow deserved.
Right.
The sources are really clear. Good theology pushes back hard against those simplistic ideas that just equate hardship directly with sin. When a crisis hits, job loss, tragedy, illness, the first human reaction is often, what did I do wrong?
Yeah, that's the instinct, isn't it? Trying to make sense of it all by finding someone, maybe yourself, to blame.
It is, but it's a dangerous instinct. Because if you just assume all pain is punitive, you actually shut down the possibility of growth, of formation. The sources really stress naming the reality. Sometimes innocent people suffer. Sometimes hardship just comes because, well, the world is broken, not because you messed up last Tuesday. Setting up this guardrail protects people from that really toxic self-condemnation.
That makes a lot of sense. So protect from blame. What's the second guardrail?
The second is guarding against avoidance, specifically what gets called spiritual bypass.
Spiritual bypass? What exactly is that?
It's subtle, but it's harmful. It's when people use scripture or prayer or positive thinking to kind of jump over the actual pain, to shut down or minimize the real emotions they're feeling. It's like slapping a cheerful spiritual Band-Aid on a deep wound.
Okay, so if my world's falling apart, the bypass would be to immediately quote a Bible verse and tell myself, don't be sad, just be positive. Is that it?
That's exactly it. Instead, the sources urge using faith practices, scripture, prayer, as tools to actually hold those tough emotions, to process them honestly.
Okay.
And this points to a core shift in identity that the material talks about. Resilience isn't being stoic and independent, just muscling through alone.
Right.
And it's not about forced cheerfulness either, that surface level stuff.
So if it's not those things, what is it in practical terms?
It's described as being apprenticed into cruciform rhythms.
Cruciform rhythms. Okay, let's translate that jargon a bit.
Yeah. Basically, it means finding strength, not in your own self-sufficiency or trying to control everything, but actually in surrender, independence, on God, on community. It's the pattern, a rhythm of lament, endurance, hope, and ultimately transformation. The goal isn't rugged independence. It's a dependently strong faith, strength that's rooted in connection.
You listed those rhythms: lament, endurance, hope. That first one, lament. Wow, that feels almost completely ignored today, doesn't it?
It really does.
It feels like we've replaced it with either, just complaining or just avoiding the topic altogether, like a lost art.
And yet, it's presented as this surprising core practice, straight out of the Psalms, the prophets. Lament isn't just venting. It's defined as a structured, honest expression of pain, of protest, even pleading, but directed to God.
Directed to God. That's key.
It's an essential spiritual discipline. We often think bringing our anger, our confusion, our pain to God is a sign of weak faith, right? But the sources argue it's actually, paradoxically, an act of profound trust, even worship.
Okay, but what makes this structured lament different from, say, just venting my spleen or complaining endlessly?
That's a great question. Complaining often goes horizontally, right? To other people, maybe about fate, about institutions, and it often doesn't really lead anywhere. Lament goes vertically to the source of hope. And it has this inherent structure that actually disciplines the heart. It keeps you from just collapsing into rage or despair or bitterness alone. Early leaders, like Peter and James in the New Testament, they understood this. They could reframe trials as opportunities because they were steeped in the Psalms. The Psalms gave them that raw, honest, yet somehow disciplined model for processing pain and confusion before God.
Can you walk us through that structure? Because that sounds incredibly practical, like a real tool someone could use.
Absolutely. It generally follows a kind of movement. It starts with address you call on God directly, by name.
Okay.
Then comes the complaint. This is where you lay it out honestly. You articulate the painful facts, the damage, without minimizing it. Brutal honesty is welcome.
Right. No sugarcoating.
None. Third is the petition. You make a clear ask. Help me, intervene, show me the way, whatever it is you need.
Okay.
Then, crucially, this is often followed by remembrance or claim. Here, you consciously recall God's past faithfulness. You remind yourself and God of the bigger story, the promises.
So you're grounding the present pain and past hope.
Exactly. And finally, it tends to resolve, even if the circumstances haven't changed yet, with a vow or praise, a statement of renewed trust, or maybe looking forward to deliverance. And even now, I will trust kind of statement.
Wow. That structure. It gives the pain somewhere to go, doesn't it? It stops it from just swirling around endlessly.
Precisely.
It kind of guides the heart through the emotion, but stops the emotion from just taking over the whole story.
That's the deep psychological insight here, I think. Resilience grows because, one, lament allows for that radical honesty. It breaks the toxic pattern of suppressing or minimizing pain.
Right.
And two, by pushing towards remembrance and vow, it aids what psychologists call narrative integration. It helps you place this painful event within a larger, ultimately hopeful story.
Instead of letting the pain become your whole story.
Exactly. That's the difference between just experiencing pain and having that pain actually become formative, shape you in a positive way.
Okay, so if lament is kind of like preparing the soil, clearing the ground, then we need the actual building plan for the long haul. Let's get into that framework, that architecture you mentioned. The source material lays out this modular, actionable pathway, a 4-stage discipleship design.
Yeah, it's presented as a very clear sequential process designed to be used intentionally in mentoring or small groups. This isn't about hoping people accidentally stumble into resilience. It's about intentionally forming it.
Okay, let's break it down. Take us through the stages.
Stage 1 is called orientation, naming the furnace.
Naming the furnace, okay.
The main goal here is stabilization and mapping. First, you establish safety, a safe relationship, a safe space. Then you teach the biblical maps of suffering, helping people figure out, is this pain from the world's brokenness? Is it consequences of my own choices? Is it persecution? And crucially, you normalize lament. Give people the language and permission to look the fire in the face without running.
Okay, so safety, understanding the landscape, and permission to be honest. Then what?
Then you move from that orientation into active practice. Stage 2 is endurance practices under pressure.
Practices under pressure. So not waiting until things calm down.
Exactly. This is where the real work happens. Individuals start engaging specific spiritual disciplines while they are actively going through the trial. This isn't passive waiting. It's about building habits that actually shape what some call the neuroplasticity of hope.
Neuroplasticity of hope. That's evocative.
Yeah.
How do small practices done under stress actually rewire things?
Well, think about it. When you're under acute stress, your brain naturally defaults to fear circuits, right? Fight or flight.
Sure.
So practices like, say, simple breath prayers or meditating on a short scripture passage, done repeatedly in those moments of stress, they act like circuit breakers. They interrupt that automatic fear response. They literally carve out new neural pathways, new habits of attention, of focus. They anchor you in something external, something true, rather than just the internal storm of anxiety. This stage also includes things like setting healthy boundaries, which is crucial under pressure, and committing to small, consistent acts of service for others.
So you're building the muscle during the stress test, training yourself to respond with practiced peace instead of just raw panic. Okay. What happens after the peak stress maybe starts to subside a bit?
That leads perfectly into stage 3, integration rewriting the story. And this, arguably, is the most vital step for lasting health. The goal here is to help the person weave that suffering experience into their larger life narrative, but specifically a gospel-shaped narrative. Not as a scar that defines them, but as a chapter that deepened them.
How does that work? Is it like journaling or?
It often involves things like structured testimony work
Yeah.
or developing a spiritual autobiography. It's about moving the story from chaos to coherence.
Chaos to coherence? Explain that.
In the chaos phase, the story might just be, this terrible thing happened, I got hurt, maybe it broke me. There's no meaning, just pain.
Right.
In coherence, the story becomes more like, this terrible thing happened, and I lamented, I cried out, I endured using these practices. And through that experience, painful as it was, I learned X, Y, and Z about God, about myself, about community. The person moves from just reporting the facts to actually constructing meaning from them.
Finding the why or the what now.
Exactly. And that leads directly to the final stage, which looks outward.
Okay.
Stage 4 is multiplication forming others.
Okay.
The person who has journeyed through this, who has built resilience, is then equipped and trained to come alongside others going through similar struggles, to shepherd them with competence, wisdom, and crucially, with those ethical boundaries we talked about right at the start. They shift from being primarily cared for to being a caregiver.
You mentioned acts of service back in stage 2. And the sources seem to really highlight encouraging volunteering, maybe in care ministries. While someone is still suffering, that feels counterintuitive. Why push someone outwards when they're dealing with, say, a major job loss and maybe feel overwhelmed already?
It does seem counterintuitive, but it's powerful. Because a crisis like job loss often triggers an identity crisis, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You can feel defined by what you've lost.
Yeah.
Your role, your income, your status. Engaging in service, even small acts, while you're grieving, it fosters agency. It gives you back a sense of meaning and purpose.
Oh.
When you're hurting, but you can still show up and do something concrete for someone else, bring a meal, make a phone call, listen. Well, you shift your own self-perception. You're not just a victim of circumstance.
Yeah.
You're also still a resource, a contributor. You reclaim a bit of purpose.
Yeah.
And that directly counters the paralysis that pain can bring.
That is powerful, moving from victim to resource.
No.
Okay, but if this resilience isn't just about being tough, gritting your teeth, it's this dependently strong idea, how do you measure it? How does a leader or even the person themselves know if this deep, subtle growth is actually happening? What are we looking for besides just, not giving up?
That's a key question. We need to look beyond simple performance or grit. We look for multidimensional markers. Signs that the person's life is genuinely being forged, shaped, not just managed or endured on the surface.
Okay, give us those markers. What does tempered faith look like?
First and foremost, I'd say is narrative coherence. Can the person tell their story? Can they talk about their suffering in a way that includes meaning, that shows they had some agency, even if just in how they responded? And crucially, that holds on to hope.
So not just a story that jumps from crisis straight to a tidy, happy ending.
Exactly. If the story skips the messy middle, the integration probably isn't very deep. Being able to articulate that struggle, the doubt, the lament within the hopeful frame that shows real growth.
Okay. Narrative coherence. What about relationally?
Relational health. This is huge. Under pressure, the instinct for many is to isolate. Pull back, withdraw, lick your wounds alone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So a key marker of resilience is the opposite. The ability to stay engaged in loving, supportive relationships under pressure, and even more critically, to actively seek help. To be transparent, rather than shutting down and isolating. Isolation is often a major red flag that the process is stalled.
Right. Don't go it alone. And internally, what's happening inside?
We look for emotional regulation. Now, this doesn't mean being perfectly calm or never feeling negative emotions, not at all. It's the ability to name your emotions, anger, sadness, fear, to tolerate them and to express them without getting stuck in destructive patterns.
Like what?
Like, turning to substance abuse or constantly lashing out at others or sinking into prolonged, paralyzing despair. They feel the waves of emotion, but the waves don't completely capsize the boat. The emotion doesn't totally own them.
Okay. Feel it, name it, but don't let it run the show.
Sort of, yeah. And finally, related to what we discussed earlier, service orientation. Is there still some continued engagement, even if small, in their sense of calling, in serving others, despite the ongoing struggle? That outward focus is a vital sign.
And the sources are quite clear, aren't they, that this isn't purely a spiritual exercise. It needs to connect with good psychological understanding, too.
Absolutely essential. The real wisdom in this kind of formation architecture is how it bridges spiritual practices with sound psychological insights. That includes having a basic awareness of trauma-informed care, and crucially, knowing when the situation needs more than pastoral support, knowing when to refer someone to a licensed counselor or therapist.
And that's not failure.
Not at all. Making that referral, that warm handoff to a professional, isn't a sign of ministry failure or personal weakness. It's actually a profound sign of wisdom, of ethical care, of real relational maturity. It's knowing the limits and ensuring the person gets the full spectrum of care they need.
So this whole deep dive, it really gives you, the listener, a kind of toolkit. It shows that suffering doesn't have to be just an interruption to your life or character. It can be the very crucible that forms it if you approach it with the right framework, the right support.
That's the core message, I think.
Yeah.
To recap, this whole process aims to cultivate a resilience that is dependently strong. It's rooted in honest connection with God, with others. And it really focuses on genuine presence, being present to the pain and the process, rather than just performance, just looking good on the outside.
Right.
It deliberately pushes back against both hiding the pain stoically and also against that kind of toxic positivity, the sentimentalism that minimizes real hurt.
We've seen how the structure of Lament opens the door for honesty, how that four-stage architecture provides a pathway for growth, and how these multidimensional markers show us what real transformation looks like. The whole thing is built on the conviction that, yes, suffering has a place in your story, it's real, but it doesn't get the final word.
That truth, grounded in the story of the cross and resurrection, that's the ultimate anchor for hope, isn't it?
Absolutely. So as you think about all this, maybe look at the honest pain points in your own life right now. What's one small, practical, faithful step you could take this week to anchor yourself in that hope? Maybe it's trying out that lament structure just privately. Maybe it's committing to one small act of service for someone else. What step can you take to refuse to let that pain be wasted?